Good afternoon, students of class 8. Welcome to History class. We are reading chapter 5, coming of the Europeans, foundation of Mughal Empire, its rise and fall. Our lesson for today is section 5.9. The English East India Company becomes a political power. So, in today's lesson, we will see how English East India Company became a political power. So the first thing we need to know is the relation between the Nawabs of Bengal and the English was never very friendly. The English were obtaining concessions from the Mughal emperor to trade in Bengal. The Nawabs were very much annoyed at this. So, you know that English came to the land of India for trade, and it was the Mughal emperors who gave them the permission to trade at different parts of India, including Bengal. Now, the Nawabs of Bengal were very much unhappy with this decision of Mughals, and this English and the Nawab were rivals to each other. The Nawabs considered the economic improvement of Bengal the most. The English, on their part, were also ready to meet the occasional unlawful monetary demand of the Nawab's officials. Thus, it may be said that despite allegations and counter allegations on different issues between the Nawab and the English, there was also a tacit understanding between the two. So, on the surface, the Nawabs were showing that they cannot tolerate English or English East India Company, but when we delve deeper into their relation, we will find that they were somehow uh, in a mutual understanding between themselves. But when the English, with some political motive, secretly strengthened the Fort William with new fortification, hostilities between the two became inevitable. So, in the last class, you learned about this Fort William, and the English East India Company built this Fort William in Calcutta to strengthen their position. Now, when the Nawabs, when they were seeing that English East India Company were rising politically, or they are getting a political stronghold on their land, they became very much cautious about this English East India Company. Initially, they were demanding a huge money from English East India Company, and English East India Company were giving them their demand or fulfilling their demand. That's why they were somehow tolerating them. But when they saw that this English East India Company have now the intention to control their land politically, they became very cautious of this move. And it was in this background that the Battle of Palashi took place. Now, in 1756, Siraj ud-Daulah, who became the Nawab of Bengal in 1756, even before he had become the Nawab, Siraj was not at all happy with the English. He really wanted to drive the English out of Bengal. But because of his personal weakness, as also the conspiracy against him by some influential persons and members of his family, he failed to take timely actions that brought his misfortune. He was thoroughly defeated in the Battle of Palashi in 23rd June 1757. Now, this battle of Palashi, which took place between Siraj ud-Daulah and English East India Company, had utmost significance in the history of India. Why? It was because this battle made the English master of Bengal, and within next 100 years they overran the whole of India. In fact, after the battle, the English became the real power behind the Bengal Nawab. That means the Bengal Nawabs who came after Siraj ud-Daulah, they were not at all powerful ruler, and it was English East India Company who were ruling from behind them. So they were the real power behind the Bengal Nawab. The Nawab had no power at all and he had to act on the wishes of the English. The next important battle that further strengthened the British rule in India was the Battle of Buxar, which took place in 1764. Victory in the battle, defeating the combined army of Mughal Emperor Shah Alam II and the Nawab of Bengal, Mir Qasim, firmly established British domination in India. After the defeat at the Buxar, the Bengal Nawab lost all the power to oppose the English. The new Nawab, who was installed by the English, became a puppet in their hands. Besides, the English also completely controlled Shah Alam II, the Mughal emperor, and the Nawab of Oudh. So, this Battle of Buxar strengthened the power of British rule in the land of Bengal. Another important thing that further increased the power of English was the grant of Diwani in 1765. Robert Clive, who was the governor during that time, on behalf of English East India Company, received the grant of Diwani from Mughal Emperor Shah Alam II. The grant of Diwani meant that the English East India Company will henceforth stand forth as the Diwan or the revenue collector of Bengal. So they had the power to collect money or the taxes from Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa. In place of it, the English agreed to make payment of 26 lakhs of rupees to the Mughal emperor as yearly tribute. The grant of Diwani marked the end of the independent rule of the Nawab of Bengal. So when they were given the power to collect revenue from Bengal, so they became the most powerful being in the land of Bengal. So Nawabs of Bengal lost all their power. Virtually, the beginning of the rule of English East India Company started from this point. In a word, with the grant of Diwani, the political power of Bengal silently passed on the East India Company. So, three things that we came to know today is the Battle of Palashi, Battle of Buxar, and this grant of Diwani. All these were important. Why? Because these are the three steps that made English East India Company the most powerful ruler, or that gave the political stronghold to the English East India Company in the land of Bengal. So now you open your book to page number 50 and read this section and see whether you have any problem understanding it or not. If you have any query, you can mail at the given mail address.